Well, hello again, everybody. My name is Tom Colohue. I am here on the Tom Colohue YouTube channel, ready today to talk about the battle in the ongoing war between the WWE and AEW, that is World Wrestling Entertainment and All Elite Wrestling. Both feature wrestling, but both are very, very different kinds of wrestling. Hello, the user. Immediately in, I appreciate that. Welcome, mate. This, as always, is going to be an Ask Me Anything stream. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to the ongoing battle. I'm going to be talking about who won, how much by, and more importantly, what this means to each individual company, what their goals were going into this and what they've been able to achieve. So we're going to be talking about quite a lot and going very in depth, but this is a Tom Colohue show. And whenever there is a Tom Colohue show, there are certain rules that apply. Amongst those rules, we are Ask Me Anything. You can ask whatever you would like of the chat. You can ask whatever you would like of the group. You can do whatever you would like within reason in the show. Also today, as this is Sunday night, poured myself a very tall glass of wine with a little bit of limoncello to jazz it up a little bit. Basically cloudy lemonade, but with some alcohol in it, to keep me company as the night rolls down to work tomorrow and so on and so forth. We will be live and streaming on Monday, so tomorrow here on YouTube, 6 p.m. usual time, that is 1 p.m. Eastern time. We will not be live the same time on Friday on YouTube because I'm going to a funeral. So, busy, not for a positive, but busy nonetheless. In the meantime, welcome everyone. I am Tom Colohue, for those who don't already know, and today we're jumping straight into it. We're talking about the ongoing war between the WWE and AEW. We're going to talk about who's winning, who's losing, and what it means. So I'm going to start with the basics. What we had on Friday was the first in what will be many salvos on Friday nights between WWE Smackdown and AEW Rampage. Now, different people will blame different people for the fact that this sort of exploded into view from a great distance. A lot of people will naturally blame the WWE for adding an extra half hour to a supersize SmackDown. This was nominally to test whether or not a third hour of SmackDown on FS1 would be effective. They want that extra sponsorship money. However, it did manage to gain a life of its own thanks primarily to Tony Khan of AEW getting involved in a big way. He saw that they were going to have WWE encroaching upon them and decided that that was a gauntlet being thrown down that he could not resist. So he picked that gauntlet up and he said, "You are challenging us, we will not take it lying down." What happened next was a furious amount of back and forth between both companies. The WWE adding Brock Lesnar, adding Sasha Banks and Becky Lynch as a match to main event, adding a half hour at the end of the show with no commercial breaks. AEW once again responding in kind with an hour-long buy-in on YouTube featuring Bryan Danielson and Minoru Suzuki, and then making their first half hour, so the one that was directly competing with WWE, commercial free as well. Both companies took a nice hit on potential sponsorship money there, which really did affect the bottom line for SmackDown, not so much for AEW where they're not charged as much for the time. Now, we have our earliest numbers, and that's for the ratings. Tony Khan did say he thought that Rampage could overtake SmackDown. This seems a little ridiculous for several reasons. Firstly, SmackDown, when it's not on FS1, gains an average of roughly 2 million viewers. AEW Rampage ain't getting close to that. Nothing AEW has ever done has gotten even close to that. With it on FS1, it leveled the playing field considerably. However, even on FS1, WWE's numbers have never been as low as Rampage's numbers have been at current. So Rampage started very well with CM Punk and the appearance there at over 1 million, but has sunk week on week to a point now where it is roughly 500,000. Because of this, the war benefited both in tremendous measure. The WWE were able to basically shout out loud, as loudly as possible, "We're going to be on Fox Sports 1, not Fox," just in case anyone misses it, which should ensure them that some of those viewers actually are able to find the show. There is, of course, still limitations when it comes to the amount of people who have that channel, but the WWE were at least able to say, "Hi, we're here now, we go here now. AEW, meanwhile, I expected a significant bounce to their numbers. My expectation was a growth of about 40%, which would take them up to about 700,000. They have exceeded that a little, and the number is expected to be a little higher going forwards, but they have not beaten WWE. WWE Smackdown, even on a weaker station than usual, still defeated AEW Rampage handily. We'll get to numbers in just a moment, but I've got a couple of people jumping in. The user says, do you think the mystery tag team being FTR was a bit of a letdown? I do. I think when you say mystery, you'd like it to be someone mysterious. Someone where it's a bit of a secret, a bit of a surprise. I don't think FTR was much of a surprise. I think, if anything, that just sort of continues the way that things have been going. And Ed Fries is also here saying, hey Ed Fries, how are you? 5 p.m. over for you in, I believe it's Boston, is it not? Hopefully you just finished work, you're settling down with a nice drink. You won't have been working, it's a Sunday. What am I talking about? Hope you're well, mate. That's where we're going with this. For anyone who has not done so yet, please remember to click like on this video. It makes a very big difference to myself and what we're able to achieve on this here channel. So please do consider hitting that like button. It does guarantee us more viewership, which long term guarantees us more subscribers, and as a extension of that will guarantee more watch time and potentially money in my pocket. So thank you for anyone who does click like on these videos. Oh, I just had to put in a half day on a Saturday. It is a Sunday, but fair enough, mate. You're a hard-working man. Noob says hello. Hello, Noob. How are you? Welcome, everybody. So let's get to the numbers, shall we? So these are the fast national numbers. They've been reported pretty heavily since yesterday, quite early on, but they are the fast national numbers, so they are not exactly what the numbers will be. Both of these numbers will increase by the time we get the actual ratings numbers out. So the fast nationals that have been reported are for SmackDown on Fox Sports 1, 793,000 views. 793,000 views, or should I say viewers. Now, this is in no way an exact science, an exact number. Ratings don't always make sense, and they're not always exact. In fact, when I say not always exact, they have never been exact, and at the moment, they're about 30% out anyway. 793,000, so just under 800,000. AEW Rampage in the meantime got an average of 549,000, so just under 550,000, which is an increase of just under 50,000 from last week. So even on the Fast Nationals, there's been a lovely increase in numbers for Rampage. I still expect we're going to get that number go up to about 700,000. Meanwhile, for SmackDown, I expect it to be roughly just under or just over the 1 million mark. It is a significant win for SmackDown, and honestly, it is not a surprising win at all. It's what I feel everyone should have been expecting. SmackDown and Rampage are not in the same league when it comes to viewership for several reasons. You've got to factor in the time that they start, the fact that they're different companies with different fans and different expectations, but also it's just certain averages. Ari, welcome, says Rampage said they were going to compete against SmackDown. They can't even get 500,000. Well, to be fair, they did get more than 500,000. As I say, I do expect them to get up to about 700,000, but I do expect next week that number will drop again with no competition. The AEW Rampage buy-in, which took place on YouTube, featuring Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki, reached a number which was just about 98,000 viewers. I expected it to reach 100,000. It did not quite reach that level. 98,000 is pretty good for YouTube, and I do feel in the future we may be seeing more focus on YouTube, because what you have to consider as much as anything is the amount of subscribers they will have gained from that day. And in fact, I'll tell you exactly how many subscribers they gained from that day in just a moment. Bailey, welcome, mate. There's a good point. These are two different fan bases. They are. I do feel that in the last half hour, and this is something that AEW will call a victory, people will have turned off of WWE to tune into AEW. I think there will be more of a move from WWE to AEW than there will be from AEW to WWE. That is my expectation because of the nature of casual WWE fans who can be casual WWE fans but also hardcore AEW fans. And that's something that we do need to consider. The user says, where do you think Bray Wyatt will end up, or do you think he will retire? He will not retire. I do believe he will be starting an Impact. I believe this is one of the reasons we've seen, pardon me, one of the reasons we've seen reports that Braun Strowman is going to Impact. I do not believe for a moment that Braun Strowman is going anywhere that Bray Wyatt is not. That's my opinion on that. It says, should Tony Khan be worried about naming his titles after the networks when he's likely to have new networks when the new rights deals come up and the numbers are worth more than Turner has? Well, my expectation in that regard is that they made these titles and named them after the stations on the basis of, we're doing you a favor, we want to recognize that. But I think you're absolutely right. Future TV deals aren't guaranteed to be on the same stations. Tony Khan is fairly loyal, but he also likes money. And so far, AEW has not made a lot of money in any way, shape or form. That is something that Tony Khan has to hold on to and has to consider whenever making the next big decision. They will, of course, just change the names of the titles. It's very loose, as it were. But I do feel that cheapens the titles a little. That's just my opinion on that. And Michael says, hi, Tom. Welcome, Michael. Glad to see you, mate. All right. Let's talk about exactly what AEW gained. What AEW gained from the YouTube show on Friday. This is a really telling one. I just have to find them. I have to know exactly what their name is. So essentially, I'm going to take these numbers from Social Blade. If anyone doesn't know what Social Blade is, it's worth checking out. It's a very handy little tool for recognizing the growth of social media platforms. So I just type in AEW right there, click enter, and it will give me information. For example, in the last 30 days, they have gained 90,000 subscribers, which is down 73.5% on the 90 days previous. Right, if we look at the numbers. So on Saturday, because I'm here in the UK, they saw an increase in video views from an average of just over 1 million to 2.14 million. They gained more than 10,000 subscribers in that one day alone. However, the views that they had on Saturday are actually less than they had on Saturday the 9th of October, where they had 3.35 million views. Their estimated earnings, based on that, before you factor in the amount of generosity, the amount of generosity that people offered. So, for example, I saw someone giving $50, I saw some $10, some $5. They will have got that across it. Estimated earnings are reaching a cap of £5.6 thousand. That is roughly $7,000 on that one day for that 1 hour. Not the greatest of achievements, I've got to say, but still a significant increase. Looking at the estimated earnings via Social Blade, they are not fully aware of the algorithm, so it goes anywhere between 115,000 to 1.9 million. It's been a very good week for them. However, by the looks of it, it hasn't been that great a month, as interest has slowly started to creep down after the appearances from CM Punk, from Bryan Danielson, and from Adam Cole. It's starting to settle again, which is not necessarily a great thing. For anyone just joining, hi, I'm Tom Colohue. I'm a wrestling journalist. I am freelance, but I also work for PW Torch alongside Wade Keller, where I host Nick and Tom's Intercontinental Adventure WWE focused podcast. I'm here on YouTube. I'm also available at twitch.tv/Tom Colohue, where we do watch alongs there. If you enjoy content like this, please do remember to click like on the video and hit subscribe, and we'll be sure to see you for a lot more of it. Now, I've spoken about the AEW Impact. I want to break into the WWE Impact a little bit. Before we do that, Dominic Price has asked a question. We are an Ask Me Anything stream here. If you would like to ask me anything wrestling related or otherwise, you are absolutely free to do so. This show is largely run by you, the viewer. So any questions you have, please jump in and ask them, because that helps the show, it helps me, and of course, it gets your question answered. Dominic says, hi Tom. Do you think AJ Styles will get another run with a WWE title? And who will be the Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions? Thank you and miss the music. Once I once I move some things over from laptop to PC, the music's coming back. Not necessarily the same music, but I will have music again, and I'll have a little library of music that I can use going forwards. YouTube actually has a whole library of free music. Not all of it's great, but it has one. Pardon me. As regards AJ Styles, I do not see him having another WWE Championship run. I find that very disappointing and somewhat disheartening, but I do feel when it comes to the WWE, AJ Styles' time at the top is over, and they have no real interest in bringing that moment back. As regards Raw and SmackDown Women's Champions, I get asked this question a lot. The next Women's Champion on Raw for me is Bayley. The next Women's Champion on SmackDown for me is Shayna Baszler. That's the hope, that's the dream, as it were. I know I may be in over my head a little bit in what I'm hoping for there, but I'm hoping for it regardless, because it just sounds like a good combination and a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. So we've spoken about AEW and the impact that it's had on them. They've managed to grow by an extra 10,000 viewers on YouTube. They've managed to continue their growth as well. Social media really worked in their favor. They got a lot of trends over the course of the night, and they were able to say, we went toe to toe. Yeah, we went toe to toe with the WWE. However, they lost, and I want to make this really clear. If we see them in the next few days saying, yes, but we won in the key demographic, let's speak for a second about what that actually means. The reason they call it the key demographic is because it's supposedly a good thing for sponsorship, to say that, hi, these people are interested, you can make money from them. What they're saying to you there is that we won because we can get more of your money. And what we're doing there is hoping for a very, very rich person to become even richer and take money from our pockets. That's what the key demographic actually is. I know not a lot of people focus on it, but that is what the key demo actually is. It is AEW's opportunity to take more money from your pocket and put it into the hands of people who are already very, very rich. When Tony Khan comes out and says, yeah, but I'm rich, I can do whatever I want. When did we get to the point at which we're supporting the rich? At the same time, WWE, very rich people getting much richer. But they did win on the night. I do expect the SmackDown number, when it goes up and everything is factored in, to be in and around 1 million, whereas AEW, I expect them to be in and around 700,000. SmackDown also does have a leg up when it comes to that key demo, because as the Friday night show and with the show with Roman Reigns and Sasha Banks, it's the quote-unquote cooler show. Now, they didn't just win on the ratings. They also won in several other things. In the day, it was literally on the day of SmackDown and Rampage, the WWE undertook a media blitz. They put their top names, you had Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks and Roman Reigns, on several interviews, all of which came out on the day, meaning that they were able to grab all of the headlines. Roman Reigns got himself trending for hours before WWE Smackdown, which fights back against social media and fights back against the image that the WWE had done and AEW are just the winners. It fights back hard against that notion. Now, what I want to say even beyond that is that Roman Reigns certainly ruffled some feathers. And what he does now is nothing. Because CM Punk has responded to his comments. Tony Khan has responded to his comments. All Roman has to say is, guys, you lost, get over it. Because they did. No matter what happens next, WWE can just say, yeah, but you lost. And the WWE certainly get a handy victory there. But as I say, it's not just on ratings. Ed Fry's here making a very good point. YouTube views for Lesnar Reigns contract signing on YouTube is 3 million. Suzuki and Bryan is at 820,000. So, when it comes to YouTube views, which are the most visible YouTube metric, WWE absolutely smashed them to pieces, especially when you consider it's not just that section. Let me go right now to the WWE YouTube and I'll highlight everything that came from that, because it's not just that one thing. A lot of people are focusing on that one particular clip, but there is a hell of a lot more clips to look at. Let's scroll down until we get to... Yeah, Lesnar and Reigns is on 3 million. They also got 789,000 when it comes to Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks. 452,000 from Street Profits versus the Usos. They have 117,000 from Carmella talking to Liv Morgan. They have a commercial for Charlotte Flair versus Bianca Belair, which has 82,000. These all add up. They really do. And when you factor them in, based on those numbers that we're seeing there, it comes to roughly an extra 2 million. So we're looking at about 5 million there, all views that they are going to take advantage of and going to do so quite rightly. The WWE YouTube channel continues to grow. Let's have a quick look at their Social Blade and see how many subscribers they've gained. Ooh, wow. Okay. For comparison, in the last 30 days, AEW gained 90,000 YouTube subscribers. Also in the last 30 days, WWE gained 800,000 YouTube subscribers. WWE, once again, wins. Let's scroll down to Friday. On Friday, they had 28.6 million YouTube views. So we're sat here saying that the WWE got 3 million for Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. They got 28.6 million in that one day. That one day, they got 28 million. There really is no competition when it comes to what they've actually managed to do. WWE won in basically every conceivable metric. Now, AEW will try and rephrase it as a victory for them. That is the way that they do things. They are legacy marketers. But what I need you all to do is not believe it. It's important to look at the facts and look at the information that's available there and make decisions based on those facts, not on what people with vested interest are telling you. Tony Khan has a conflict of interest when he says that AEW won. Chris Jericho has a conflict of interest when he says that AEW won. Roman Reigns has a conflict of interest if he says that WWE won. Regardless of whether it's true or not, he has a conflict of interest. The point of wrestling journalists is to be completely independent of those conflicts of interest. Now, I know that's not the case for all of them. Many wrestling journalists going forwards will tell you what you should think and what you should believe. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you what you should think is what you think. I'm going to tell you what you should believe is what you believe. Not what someone else tells you. It's going to be phrased and rephrased and rephrased over the next few weeks as to what happened on Friday. But always remember, in the ratings, WWE won. When it comes to YouTube views, WWE won. That's what you need to recall. Michael says, I feel like this whole tag team of Omos has hurt AJ. Maybe hurt is not the right word, but he's just not as big of a deal. He absolutely is not that big of a deal on Raw. I think that's the thing to really focus on. Raw has never made AJ Styles feel like a big deal. It's never made AJ Styles feel like a big deal. On SmackDown, he's been a WWE champion. On SmackDown, he's been a bit of everything. Raw has never made him feel like a big deal. The user says, do you think Kevin Owens will leave when his contract is up and maybe Sami Zayn when his is up? I don't think that Sami Zayn will. I think that Kevin Owens might. But again, that's my personal opinion. Do you think any big superstars from AEW will go to WWE in the future? Yes. I think in a couple of years, we're going to get to the point where there is basically free movement between the two companies, much like WWF and WCW back in the day. And that's very good for those wrestlers because it means more opportunities for them. Riffing says, do you have Twitter? Michael is very grateful for you there, Michael, jumping in and saying what my Twitter is. For anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to link it in the chat right now. Twitter.com/Colohue. So it's a nice, easy link to click. Our wingmen signed with AEW. Not that I know of, Riffing. I'll wait and see for more information, but not that I know of. Bailey says AEW will tell us YouTube subscribers aren't in the demo. They absolutely are. They are more the demo than anyone else, I'll tell you that. Tommy B, welcome, says Tony Khan talked all that crap and got wrecked. He did, but he knew it was coming. Tony Khan wasn't trying to win. He knew he couldn't. What he was trying to do is get more attention on his product. Rampage's ratings were in free fall. They have lost more than 50% of their audience from the initial show. From the initial show, the very first Rampage, they were really struggling. Let's actually look at the exact numbers. I want to make sure it's absolutely correct. AEW Rampage ratings history. I want to make sure I absolutely get it right. ITN WWE, who are they? Okay. So their launch show, they did 740,000. The 20th of August, when CM Punk returned, 1.129 million. 8th of October, last week, 502,000. They lost more than 50% of their audience, and their demographic, their key demographic, was down to a 0.17 from a 0.53. They had to do something to make that change. They had to do something to reinvigorate Rampage, and this particular battle has done that for at least 1 week. We are looking at a bump of, I believe, about 40%, which would take them from that 500,000 back up to about 700,000. Whether it will stick, I'm not sure. It was their job during Rampage to convince people to stay. We'll see how that actually played out. Tommy says SmackDown was on FS1. A lot of people don't get it. SmackDown will win. It's bad news for AEW. It depends on your viewpoint. I think they challenged WWE and they lost. And the WWE now will be able to just say, yeah, but whatever you say, you lost. You remember you talked all this and then you lost. They'll be able to use that as much as they want and as effectively as they can. It will be very, very effective, as I'm sure we all know. But it's still a benefit to AEW. As we've broken down, the increase in their subscriber count, 30,000. But at the same time, WWE gained 100,000 without putting on any special shows at all. This show won't have helped AEW catch up to WWE, but it will have gotten them closer to the point where they can actually start making money. Because here's the thing that's actually really bad news for AEW. They're not a profitable company. They're not. They have not made a hell of a lot of money, and in fact, they keep getting more and more expenses because they keep signing people like CM Punk. Now they have a whole load of contracts up for the people who were there at the beginning, and most of them probably won't be getting a new deal. This is a very difficult situation that people are finding themselves in, and they do have to consider everything that's going on. AEW does need a bit of a rethink. They do. They need to think about the product that they're creating and whether or not it's actually gaining them money. This is one of the reasons that you've got Dark and Dark Elevation. It's increasing that YouTube, and they are really focused on YouTube. I do believe we will see a YouTube-only AEW pay-per-view at some point in the next couple of years. And it should happen. It absolutely should happen, because that's the future. That's the future. Hashtag I've tasted it. It will happen eventually. It's just whether or not at the time it's going to be heralded as a good move, because their views will not be that good. And they know that. Alyssa Stansbury, welcome Alyssa, says Lacey Evans teased a feud with Becky Lynch on Twitter. I feel like unfinished business. I love babyface Lacey versus heel Becky. Love her to be the one to dethrone. I actually quite like face Lacey Evans. It's really easy to turn her face from heel because of her military background. People will get behind her in the way that they don't get behind, pardon me, Jackson Riker. Also a vet, nobody cares. Lacey Evans, though, having just had her second child, I've seen the screenshot, quite a nice moment between her and her daughter and the new child as well. I think it'll be a little while before we see Lacey Evans. I think the earliest we could expect her is a WrestleMania Battle Royal, and I do think around that time Becky will be losing the championship. My suspicion is that WrestleMania will be the end of Becky's title reign, but that is my opinion on it. The user says, can AEW again bring in anyone big like Punk or Danielson? Who is there? That's the issue that we've got. Who can they actually bring in? You're looking at basically The Rock. That's basically all you've got. And here's a little scoop for you. Here's a little scoop. Yeah, they tried. They tried. And kind of are actively trying. Conversations are taking place. It's just that The Rock is a very, very loyal man. So who is there? There's Bray Wyatt, Wyndham Rotunda. That's an option, but it doesn't seem like one they're very interested in. And he very much seems to be going towards Impact. So, honestly, I don't think they can. Riv Thing says, is WWE planning to make Mace a comedy act on SmackDown, or pairing him with a funny wrestler, or make him a Baron Corbin lackey? Not that I'm aware of, no. I don't think there's any intention to make him a comedy wrestler. I just don't think there's any intention to do anything. My opinion is that when it comes to Mace and T-Bar, they don't know what to do with them. They broke them up just to think, okay, well, I'll try with one of them, but I don't want to try with both. And there's no plan for them. That's my opinion there. If anyone has not yet done so, please do remember that you can click that little thumbs up underneath the chat. That like button goes a long way to guaranteeing an increase in viewers here. And with every new viewer, there's a potential for a new subscriber. If you haven't yet as well, please do click that subscribe button. It makes a really big difference to my personal growth here, and also means potentially in the future, I may be able to do this full time. That's the dream. That's what I hope to be able to do. It makes a big difference, and I very much appreciate everyone who does so. So please do remember to hit that like button. And it's also Ask Me Anything. So if you have any questions, any comments, jump in and go for it. Go for it. Rob says AJ will get one more face run at Reigns, adding another notch to Reigns' title run while giving us an entertaining angle along the way. I don't think that will happen, Rob. I very much think that AJ Styles will be on Raw until his contract ends now. We're very close to that point. Tommy says AJ's been hurting. I think that's why they put him in the tag team. Well, it does protect him in a way. He has been taking a couple of knocks along it. But I think as much as anything, this was a large part AJ's choice. When he realised that they weren't planning to do all that much with him, they actually gave him, as a veteran, they gave him a tag team partner in Omos. Someone who really can benefit from having AJ Styles in his corner. Same thing happened with Randy Orton. There wasn't much in the way of storyline planned for them. So they basically both said, okay, can I work with this person? And now we are where we are. Riffing says Von Wagner, formerly known as Carl Bloom, looks like a taller version of Hangman Page. Haven't seen enough to really say on that one, but certainly it's a funny concept. I have a feeling that after Ciampa loses the NXT title, WWE will release him shortly after, just like they did with Bronson Reed after he lost the North American title. I don't think Ciampa's contract will be renewed. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't personally see it happening. But I've been proven wrong before on that one. I know that Ciampa, he pissed off WWE and in particular Vince McMahon quite heavily when he openly said, I don't want to go to the main roster. The main roster in WWE world is supposed to be the dream landing spot. And it's not. It's very much not. Tommy says, but AJ said he's going to retire after his WWE contract is up. He did say that. We'll see if it comes to fruition. After all, Braun Strowman said he would never wrestle for anywhere other than WWE. Wrestlers have been known to say things and then circumstances dictate a change. But I do think AJ is starting to wrap up now. He has 4 children that he wants to spend as much time with as possible. And being on the road with WWE, it's not making that happen. Nor will being on the road with anyone, really. If he does sign a new contract, it'll be for even further limited dates. Riff says Joe Gacy from NXT looks like the love child between Kevin Owens and Bray Wyatt. Definitely don't see that. That's a weird one. You're seeing a lot of stuff, Riff. Seeing a lot. Rob says AEW also has contracts likely coming up for a few of their original signings. Say if Mox was 3 years, even though he's having the time of his life, a potential Reigns versus Mox could be enticing. It could be. I don't see Moxley leaving AEW at least anytime soon. He's largely happy there because of the ability to also work an indie schedule. Also, to be blunt, he doesn't trust the WWE with the name Jon Moxley or in fact the character. I don't see him coming back. At the same time, it's not likely. Quite a lot of the AEW originals have contracts coming up sooner rather than later, and AEW are hard pressed now to get them all signed on again, even though they've not managed to make any real money during the entirety of the show so far. Since AEW Dynamite's first show, which is when the contracts were officially activated, even though it's not when they were signed, it's been a ticking down clock, and the money on offer for renewals apparently isn't the greatest. I suspect we're going to see people released. But I suspect it's going to be a rundown of the contract, and from what I can tell, AEW will manage to escape the stigma of saying that they've released a load of people by saying, okay, but their contract run down and they didn't want to sign a new one. There is a lot more goodwill around All Elite Wrestling than there is about WWE, and honestly, the end of contract is a lot better than the whole release concept, because one is being fired. One of them just isn't being offered a new contract. Alyssa says, do you think they get rid of the tag team women's division, bring in an IC women's championship belt for another mid-card belt? I don't think we're going to get another mid-card belt because the tag team championships are the mid-card belt. I don't see any value in a women's mid-card belt, especially when they'd have to introduce two, one for each show. I think it's just much better to actually just make a women's tag title division, or in fact two, if you're just going to be blunt about it, and use that. I don't see why they haven't just used the tag team division, because you've got plenty of women on that roster who want to be in tag teams. So just put them in tag teams and use them for the tag team division. It should not be this difficult. It really shouldn't. The user says, what can AEW do to gain more viewers and people liking it? Well, a lot of people do like AEW, and that's the thing. The issue is retention rate. They are able to get a lot of people to tune in for the big surprises. But you know when the big surprises are coming in AEW because they push it everywhere. When you know a big surprise isn't coming, a lot of people switch off. Their actual regular viewership is a lot lower than the numbers we've seen on Rampage and Dynamite. I think the actual numbers for Rampage that we should be expecting are below 500,000 because they keep losing. We look at the height of that 20th August, 1.129 million. The next week, they lost 399,000 viewers. Immediately. 399,000. The next week, they lost another 24,000. The week after, another 26,000, another 28,000, another 2,000, another 18,000, another 120,000 before we got to this week, where they look to gain about 700,000. Now, it's good that they're able to get that many people in, but it's bad that they're not able to keep them. AEW has not managed to convince first-time viewers to stick around. I think a large part of that is because they don't do a lot of things that WWE does in order to have that viewer retention, that being a whole lot of recaps, and to be honest, a whole lot of rematches. Those things that annoy us hardcore fans are essential to keeping hold of casual fans, and that is something that AEW has never been able to do. Dynamite's ratings. I'm going to look for those now, actually. Just look at Dynamite's ratings history. AEW Dynamite. That's not how you spell Dynamite. Rating history. ITN again. Who are they? And just look at what they've actually got. So going back right to the beginning of this year, you'll see a lot of fluctuation in the viewership. Hello, Sean. How you doing, mate? So I'm looking at the 6th of January. They had a viewership of 662,000. That fluctuated a lot. They gained another 100,000 the next week, for example. That fluctuated a lot until we got to the 14th of April, when they went from 688,000 the week before to 1.2 million, a gain of 531,000 viewers. Now, they had that 1.2 million. A month later, they were down to 936. They lost a quarter of their audience in a month. And on the 28th of May, so a month and a half later, they only had 526,000 viewers. That's all. That's literally it. They went down as low in June as 462,000. Then, suddenly, a report was leaked about CM Punk. Now, for regular viewers of the Tom Colohue Twitch channel, we were talking about CM Punk for months. Months, saying that he was talking to AEW and WWE about contract offers, but with WWE, he kept raising the bar and saying, I want more and more and more. I was very open about the fact that he was talking to WWE, but a report got leaked, and suddenly they shot up to the million again. 1.148 million. On the 8th of September, just after CM Punk returned, they reached 1.3 million. Then they lost 144,000. Then they gained 98 for the 22nd, but then they lost another 121, and then last week they lost 99. They're back now to just around about a million, and it's looking like they're going to go back under that million again. AEW Dynamite getting less than a million all over again. Their retention rate is not good enough. They get viewers. They can't keep them. That's the thing that they need to change. That's 100% the thing that needs changing, because they've got the views. They just can't keep them. Something about Dynamite and Rampage, something about those shows, if you tune in as a non-regular viewer, you don't know what's going on. You just don't. They need to change that if they're going to grow, because at the moment, their growth is based on shock moments and big surprises. CM Punk cannot return from a 7-year hiatus twice. Ooh, went into a lot of detail there. A lot of detail. Thank you for that question, the users. That was a very good question. Rob says, good point, Tom, with AJ and Raw, especially if he still has heat with Heyman, which he does. Riv thinks, says, I've just seen on WWE's roster page, they moved Riddick Moss back to the Raw roster. I know that WWE changed his brand because last time I checked, he was on the SmackDown roster on that page. Do you know when it was the last time you checked Riff? Because to my knowledge, he wasn't actually moved, and he's just been on the Raw roster the entire time. He's still on SmackDown, to my knowledge, at least. Tommy says, I thought the Brock Roman contract signing was awesome. Brock saying, I read the contract with Paul Heyman. It was. It was. A little thing like that, just a little moment like that can go a huge way. Can really go a long way and make a very, very big impact. It's really good stuff. Very good mind games, as you say. Riff says, a big difference between WWE and AEW is that AEW cares about the wrestlers and WWE cares about the characters. WWE could replace the person who plays a character anytime they want. They could, they wouldn't. It would be jarring and the audience would not take it. AEW does care about wrestling first and foremost. However, and here's one of the big problems with AEW's approach, great wrestling is everywhere. It's everywhere. This is one of the main reasons that the WWE put their focus into getting big name characters and, really interesting, compelling characters rather than just great wrestlers. Because there are hundreds of thousands of great wrestlers, millions of great wrestlers. Great wrestlers are everywhere. Great storytellers are not. The WWE intentionally booked their show more like a soap opera for those casual viewers, and it works. The user says, I don't know about you, but I think if AEW and WWE ever worked together or traded superstars, we could get some dream matches. We could, however, only AEW would benefit. Any deal like that only benefits the smaller side. If I did a collaboration with a big name streamer, the big name streamer ain't gaining anything new, I would. They wouldn't. When I jump onto Steve SCW Wrestling channel, for anyone who's not aware, when I jump onto his show, I did a Q&A question and answer session with him last week. That was really a lot of fun. He's helping me more than I'm helping him because he's a bigger channel. Bailey says, from a financial standpoint, is AEW better off with tapings in Jacksonville rather than running house shows around the US? Would the hardcore fans even care if they didn't tour? Hardcore fans wouldn't care if they didn't tour, but I think they'd be a little disappointed that they don't get AEW in their area. Now, they will get strong ticket sales because strong ticket sales is sort of the AEW way. But I don't think they could handle a WWE level of touring schedule. It's a lot to ask of the talent, and even the WWE have serious reservations. The WWE, here's another little scoop for you. The WWE going forwards plan to do a lot less live shows for all of their rosters. A lot less live shows and a much more of a break and rest for their different superstars as well. They are planning to give people a lot more time off. And a part of that also means that new contracts are going to have a bit less money as well. Sean says, why do I have a feeling Cody is beating Malachi this time? Because Cody Rhodes has that Roman Reigns feel about him where you're like, oh, he's going to win again. Even though when he loses, it tends to be a very good deal. But hey, he's back and he's doing things again. Malachi Black, for me, has not quite hit the ground as we expected him to. Aleister Black, Malachi Black, was supposed to be a game changer. Then Andrade came in on top of him. Then CM Punk came in on top of him. Then Bryan Danielson came in on top of him. Now Adam Cole came in on top of him. Adam Page returned on top of him. Malachi Black feels like he's exactly where he used to be. Miro feels like he's exactly where he used to be. The important question, though, is are they happy? Because if they're happier, they're not where they used to be. You can be happy at the very bottom level of one company. And ultimately, that's the most important thing. Whether you're happy with your position. For anyone just joining us, hi, I'm Tom Colohue. I'm a pro wrestling journalist, largely freelance, but I do work for PW Torch with Wade Keller, where I host the Nick and Tom Intercontinental Adventure. I do a lot of streaming right here, covering a lot of different topics. Today we're talking about SmackDown's victory over AEW Rampage and what that means for both companies going forwards. If you're interested in content like this, we broke it down with a lot of different information, a lot of different breakdown about the growth on YouTube and the views that they had, comparisons there, as well as viewership, ratings, and social media presence. We covered it in a lot of ground, and if you missed a part of this stream, I do advise going back afterwards and checking it all out because we covered a lot of ground. What I will ask is that if you are able to, if you haven't yet done so, please click that like button. It makes a really big difference to me personally and makes very little difference to yourself. Just a second of your time can really have a huge impact here. It could guarantee more viewers, and with more viewers is a guarantee potentially of more subscribers, more watch time, and more of a future doing this for myself. So I would really appreciate if you can like if you haven't, subscribe if you haven't as well. Thank you. Ooh, let's keep going. Alyssa says Roman Reigns should hold the belt until 1000. Wouldn't mind keeping it until WrestleMania 40. Drop the belt. When he next drops the belt, it needs to mean something. I think years of it would make it feel more prestigious, more than Brock Lesnar's reign. I think come SummerSlam, which is rumoured to be in England, well, not England, in the UK, Drew McIntyre will be taking the championship from Roman Reigns. However, that would still be a 2-year championship run. And I think that is more than enough. We at some point do need... I do think we need some motion on that. I don't think we're ready yet. Nobody's of the level to take on Roman Reigns yet. But once they are, I would like to see that change. Jermaine says, welcome Jermaine. If you listen to Dave Meltzer, AEW is beating WWE in the ratings. Yeah, in no way, shape or form is AEW beating WWE. The key demographic, as I mentioned earlier, is a fallacy. The key demographic, what it actually means is that key demographic, that group of people in that demographic are more likely to spend money on what sponsors are going to put in the advertisements in between the show. So what you are doing by celebrating a victory in the key demographic is basically saying, yes, a rich guy is going to get richer. That's what you're celebrating with the key demographic victory. It's also people claiming victory when they have a vested interest. Tony Khan has a vested interest in making you think his company wins. Roman Reigns has a vested interest in making you think his company wins. It's ever so slightly Donald Trump. Ever so slightly. And I do think one of the reasons I wanted to do this stream is to break down the numbers without that vested interest. Without direct benefit to myself. There is no benefit to me in breaking down these numbers. But the numbers are very clear. On YouTube, for example, in the last month, WWE has gained 800,000 subscribers. AEW has gained 90,000. That is the situation that we've got them in. When it comes to the rank on YouTube for video views, the WWE is 5th on all of YouTube. All of YouTube. It is 5th on all of it. AEW, not so much. Let's have a look at where the AEW ranks. 8,085th. Now we should expect that because they are two very separate entities. And of course, I can see on here that the total subscribers boost has been huge over the last few weeks for AEW. But they're not WWE level. They're just not. And we shouldn't be in a position where we have to hold them to that standard because that standard just doesn't exist. Meanwhile, SmackDown won on the ratings on the day. They won on the YouTube views tenfold. It wasn't even close. So whatever victory that AEW tried to say that they achieved, they have not done so. But it wasn't about winning on ratings. It was about just making people more aware of AEW Rampage. It was about stopping the rot. But as I say, they can get viewers. They can't keep them. That's the problem here. You can put on the best show in the world. If no one tunes in next week, it doesn't matter. That's the problem that AEW are facing. It's retention rate, not viewership. Riff says CM Punk versus Malachi Black is destined to happen. Absolutely it is, and what a great match that would be. Sean says, Alyssa, I don't think he holds it that long. I believe he loses it to Drew after WrestleMania 38, similar to what I said there as well. Kervin, welcome, mate. Says, can you see Bianca Belair becoming Raw Women's Champion? Yes, but not for a while yet. I think that'll be closer to middle of next year that I think we'll see that. Riffing says, should Impact sign Ryback? No, no one should ever sign Ryback. Nobody benefits from the signing of Ryback. Kervin says, competition between AEW and WWE has helped make this show good. It absolutely has. We got 2 fantastic shows on Friday. Now, admittedly, SmackDown had some dips, as it were. And to be fair, so did the buy-in. Had a couple of dips before we got to the main event. But I do feel that we got 2 really good shows that were well worth watching. I like this competition in wrestling. We need this competition in wrestling. It's a huge benefit to all of us as viewers to get this. Riff says, should AEW turn Cody heel? At the right time, yes. I don't think we've got there yet. Michael says, I've never really fought the more veteran wrestlers needing the live events. They don't really have the reps like the younger guys do. Yeah, and The Undertaker's been very open about that. Doing 1 match a year is very, very difficult for him because he doesn't have that match fitness. It takes a long time to get it back up. He essentially trains a year to do 1 match. Same with Triple H. That said, it's not about the younger wrestlers per se, but they will learn more on the road by wrestling the veterans, and the veterans will be kept on their toes by the younger wrestlers coming through. It is a big deal. Riff says AJ has finally signed Daniel Garcia. I can confirm that that is exactly what has happened, yes. I think he's a future main eventer, and I love the pairing of him with 2.0. I don't necessarily think he's a future main eventer. I think we fall into a trap a little bit of AEW of thinking that everyone is a future main eventer, but we'll see how it goes. Tommy says, I feel Black is a great talent, but both WWE and AEW doesn't know how to use his gimmick. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't think he fully knows how to use his gimmick. And that, naturally, that's a problem. Because there is a lack of understanding about what character he wants to portray, and a lack of understanding about going forwards, what they're going to do with that character. I think that's true of a lot of occult characters. Lance, how you doing, mate? Says, I disagree with Miro. Absolutely fair. I'm not sure if you saw his promo on Rampage, but it was fantastic. One of the best he's delivered in my opinion. He still made himself come across as a big deal. That, I think, is the biggest difference between Rusev and Miro. He was always a good promo. He was always very, very funny. But for some reason, it just never happened in WWE. They wouldn't let him be himself. In AEW, he's allowed to be himself, and you can see he's enjoying himself a lot more. That comes across in his feuds, that comes across in his wrestling as well. The user says, is there a reason Rampage is not on in the UK on any TV channel? Essentially, AEW haven't been able to convince anyone in the UK to host the show. That's basically it. It says a lot that AEW haven't been able to convince anyone in the UK to take a punt on their show. But unfortunately, they will need to keep building in order to convince them, to convince UK channels that it's worth it. Impact got deals. Tommy says, but Rusev is still mid-card like in WWE, no change. To that level, yes. We'll see how it goes from here. Rob said, Tom, non-reporter question. By all means. Who is your favourite wrestler as a young fan and what inspired you towards doing this for a living? Oof. It always gets an interesting reaction when I say this, but my favourite wrestler growing up was Triple H. I just liked that he was an absolute dick. I just liked that. He was a very compelling and interesting character to me. He was in DX when I first started. He had the moment at WrestleMania 15 when Chyna had left him. She came back to him, and then he turned heel because actually he went back to her rather than the other way around. That was really compelling. I was really happy to see him finally get his chance. And also, the first pay-per-view I ever watched was SummerSlam 1998. Triple H versus The Rock in a ladder match. Easily the best match. The Rock did a blade job, I'll have you know. So what inspired me was a little bit of opportunity. I've been a journalist since I was 19 and a writer. For those who don't know, I'm actually an author. I have books available for Kindle on the Amazon store. You can buy my novels on Amazon. I've got 3 of them. Yep, I've got 3 of them available, and I'm still writing the 4th. So I've been an author for a long time. I started doing journalism work to essentially pay the bills. And I got my first job writing for the website ultimateguitar.com, doing some guitar tutorials and some fiction, which is mostly still available on there, that can be checked out if any of you guys are interested in that, but I'd really rather you didn't. I was not very good at the time. And went from there, became a wrestling journalist on the back of that. Well, became a music journalist on the back of that. Became a wrestling journalist because I picked up my WWE network and thought, I want to write about this. I'll send out some emails. Got a response from Wade Keller. The rest is history. Thank you for the question. Riff says, is it mandatory for every WWE and AEW wrestler to have a driver's license? It is not, though it is preferred because you do have to do a lot of driving for the job. Tommy says, how about AJ versus Roman for the title? Would be lit. Give AJ maybe a last big time run. Can't see it. I just can't see it, especially when you consider Paul Heyman's involvement. Riffing says, I think that Cameron Grimes hasn't been called up because his character is very similar to the Happy Corbin gimmick. Very possible. A lot of people weren't called up briefly. However, a lot of people weren't called up, and I need to say this because a lot of people haven't recognized this. A lot of people weren't called up because there's no room left. There's only so much room on the main rosters, so a lot of people were never going to be called up. Cameron Grimes was not going to be called up in the draft. He was not going to be called up in the draft, despite people thinking that he would be. The user says, would a UK SummerSlam be good for ratings or ticket sales? Yes, both. Tommy says, I feel AEW has to do the surprise debuts just to boost their ratings because without that their ratings fall. My apologies. Fall. Their ratings do fall without those. AEW is built on surprise appearances. That's not enough to keep your viewers. They need to find a way to present themselves at least slightly differently. They need to find a way to do that. At the moment, they are failing at doing that. But yeah, we've examined the ratings and they do fall pretty significantly week on week without those big surprises. Dynamite should be heading back below 1 million. Now, admittedly, NXT ain't exactly catching up. NXT is not doing great either. But if AEW don't have a big surprise in Dynamite soon, they might start to. Rob says, another part of that key demographic that's overlooked is 50 plus is looked down on, but looking back over time and past wrestling companies and television in general is typically the leader period. Yeah, a lot of disrespect has gone to that 50 plus demographic. They're still people. They're still watching. The key thing is not... The key demographic is a myth. Just to be completely blunt, the key demographic is a myth. You don't get more sponsorship money based on how many young people are watching. You get more sponsorship money based on how many people are watching. Getting a higher key demographic but a lower rating does not mean you've won anything. It doesn't. Riff says, I think that Thunder Rosa will defeat Britt for the AEW Women's Championship. I don't think there's many other people who actually could. The AEW Women's division does not feature a lot of well-built women, unfortunately. Alyssa says, Roman Reigns needs to make a new star, not Drew McIntyre. It's too predictable. I would have liked to see, for example, Roman Reigns versus Damian Priest. That would have been a lot of fun. Outside of that, though, there's not many new stars really breaking through right now. Outside of Priest, outside of Bianca Belaire, outside of maybe Matt Riddle. But even Matt Riddle is not the youngest, and I don't feel he's got that long left before that big moment comes. Of the people currently lower down the card, I'm looking at Shinsuke Nakamura, even though he's quite far in his career as well, as potential people to defeat Roman Reigns. After that, it gets thin on the ground. It really does. Sean says, did you see the vignette for Buddy Matthews confirming he is joining NJPW? I did, and I'm hyped. You guys know that I really wanted to see Buddy Matthews going to New Japan. It seemed like the perfect fit. This is what I predicted. This is what I was hoping for. And I'm very, very glad to have it. Jermaine says, hey Tom, what's going on with Dakota Kai? Is she moving up to the main roster? Jermaine, I did do a video on this YouTube that you can check out afterwards with a lot of detail on Dakota Kai and a number of others. For example, Volta, Io Shirai, and who was the other one? LA Knight. So by all means, check that out if you haven't already. But just to recap that, Dakota Kai, they didn't have anything good planned or pitched, so they decided not to pull the trigger yet. She's a call-up in waiting. As soon as they have something for her, she will be there. Riffing says, do you think WWE has the power to sabotage AEW? Yes. Yes, and I think they will actively be doing so, just as AEW are actively sabotaging WWE. This is war, guys. This is war. This is full-on war. between these two companies. They are doing everything they can to screw each other over. As a wrestling journalist, I've been on the receiving end of these sabotage tactics for some reason. Anytime I gain a modicum of success, you see all the bitches come out the woodwork and just go on the attack, trying desperately to make sure that nobody follows this show, because if I'm reporting news for free, you're not going to be looking on their paywall. Sabotage does happen, pretty much non-stop. Riff says, is Seema still signed of AEW? I don't know for certain, so I can't say. Bailey says the days of performers wrestling 250 or 300 nights a year at house shows isn't just over, it's dangerous. Ric Flair was able to do it, but a lot of others didn't. Very, very true. Those days are over, and they are a necessity to be over. We cannot continue the way that things have been going. People need a rest. People need a break. I'm glad that those days are coming to an end. Riff says, I think that AEW signed Bobby Fish because they want to reunite the Undisputed Era in the future. Possibly. However, I think they signed Bobby Fish because Adam Cole said, hey, this guy's out of contract. He's really good. Can you give him a shot? They said, yeah, let's give him a shot. And then they looked at him and said, yeah, we like this guy. Let's sign him. I think it's more like that. Rob says, Cody likely will be an arrogant, narcissistic heel, in reality very Homelander-esque. That is such a good comparison. That is a perfect comparison. Caring less about the fans that he continues to profess his love and honour to in proclaiming to always remain their hero. That would play out magnificently. Thank you for sharing that, Robs. Jermaine says, right now on SmackDown starting this Friday, who are the top 5 guys to feud with Roman? Drew McIntyre is obviously one of them. Shinsuke Nakamura also listed. I would look at Sheamus potentially changing dynamic to go against Roman at some point. After that, as I say, very, very thin on the ground. There's a number of people lower down the card who should get opportunities from this, but they're so low down the card that I can't really say for certain that they'll be involved. I'd like to see Kevin Owens, at least if he's going to get signed off, be signed off by Roman. So I've given you 4 there. I'm struggling to come up with a 5th. I'm going to say Jey Uso. You know, that split and that fight. I'm going to say Jey Uso. Riffing says, will you be shocked if Kevin Nash and Scott Hall appear on AEW? Yeah, Kevin Nash doesn't like AEW. He's made that clear. Michael says, who do you see winning the TBS title? I'm hoping for Ruby. I think Ruby's a shoo-in here. I think that may have been a part in convincing her to stick around. I like what they've done with Ruby. I like that there is a TBS title, but I would like it to drop a little bit further down because I think Ruby should be competing for the top title, at least at the moment. We'll see how it goes. Rob says, Tom, you're quickly becoming one of my daily must-watch streams. Keep up the good stuff. Thank you, Robs. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me to hear. I'm just trying to be as entertaining and as fun as possible, while also giving as much information as I can. I don't know how long you've been with us, Robs, but thank you very much for clicking that subscribe when you did and for joining us when you did. That does mean a lot to me to read, so thank you. Riff says, I don't think that WWE will change the booking of their show even if they bring younger wrestlers to the main roster. Main roster will remain the same until Vince dies. Here's the thing, Riff. It's actually working, and people don't seem to realize that this is actually working. The WWE are making record profits, and even though their ratings are declining year on year, all ratings are declining year after year. And the fact that they're still able to get 2 million viewers for SmackDown is pretty impressive. That's actually very impressive if you actually look at the comparisons to other TV stations. What they're doing is working. AEW have presented a perfect example of what happens if you don't do that retention trick, if you don't do things the same way. That, I think, needs respecting a little bit. Just a little bit. The user says, who do you think will be the first big superstar from AEW to go to WWE? Been asked this quite a lot. My answer has never changed. I think Lance Archer is likely to be the first big change from AEW to WWE. There is interest in Lance Archer. There has been for a while, and I think an offer will be made at some point. Michael says, Malachi and Dante Martin had a fantastic match on Dynamite. This is one of my favourite things about AEW. You hear names that, like, I've never heard of Dante Martin. Never heard of him. But he's getting matches against Malachi Black. He's getting matches that you'll see, you'll watch because of the other guy. They intersperse their lower tier wrestlers a lot more freely than WWE does. And it makes the big matches feel more special. but it also makes the lower down the card guys feel more special. Riff says, so AEW still hasn't opened the Forbidden Door of Ring of Honor, even if Homicide had appeared on Rampage weeks ago. The Forbidden Door, once again, it's a myth. It's a myth. It's a bit of clever branding. There is a lot of conversation going on. Ring of Honor, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, notoriously difficult to work with. As a wrestling journalist, I try to keep my distance. Rob says, I can foresee Sheamus and Cesaro reforming the bar and backing up McIntyre against the Bloodline as well. Ooh. Ooh. Oh, you got some good stuff. Oh, that could be fun. Tommy says, I bet AEW is trying to get Batista to try and show up to boost their ratings. They may be doing it. They will be talking to a lot of different celebrities to try and make them appear. Batista would be a coup. However, he's not going. Batista has no interest in returning to wrestling in any capacity, and he's very loyal to Triple H, not necessarily WWE, but to Triple H. Riff says, why don't AEW use Sonny Kiss that much? I think it's because of the network. I don't think it's because of the network. I just think they didn't really have any plans for Sonny Kiss. I think Sonny Kiss was hired at a time when they needed bodies, they needed talented people. Since then, they brought in how many people? Just on top? Sonny Kiss has kind of been forgotten about by AEW. Sean says, do the Street Profits beat RK Bro on Raw tomorrow? I don't find it likely, but I also don't find it impossible. They're going to need new feuds for RK Bro after Saudi Arabia. Street Profits would be absolutely perfect for it. The user says, do you know when any AEW contracts are up? Yes, I do. However, it's not really my business to know that, so I tend to keep it quiet. Tommy says, how about bringing Volta to SmackDown to take down Roman? I think that would be awesome. Would be a lot of fun. He would not take down Roman. Volta does not want to move to the US. I did mention a video earlier where I talked about Volta's potential call-up. I discussed it more in that. Volta's been open that he does not want to move outside of Europe. That's the only reason he's in NXT UK. They are trying to convince him at the moment. I don't know if they've necessarily succeeded, but they're trying to convince him right now. Would be a great match, would be a lot of fun. I just don't know if it will ever actually happen, unfortunately. Riffing says, how many years do you think the television will have until it'll become extinct and will be replaced by internet streaming? I think it'll be a while yet. I really do. I think we're looking at 20, 30 years minimum. Even with low ratings, television will still survive. Because you've still got shows like Game of Thrones, which just grab a whole load of people at once. But internet streaming is taking over. And everything needs to get online sooner rather than later. You can make more money now from Netflix than you can from the BBC, from NBC. There's a reason that HBO Max now exists. Everything is binge, everything is catch up. I finished watching Loki yesterday. Literally yesterday. I started watching it the day it was released. This is just how it works now. So I do think TV's... It's going to go eventually, but it will be replaced by something even better. Rob says, GCW is the one cracking up in that Forbidden Door, quickly becoming number 3 on the scene and the top indie. There is a fight going on for top indie for sure. GCW is definitely in that fight. The user says, is The Rock done with wrestling now, or is there any more plans? Well, that's the thing. There were reports that The Rock was going to be at Survivor Series. There are now reports saying that he's not going to be at Survivor Series. As I was saying, those reports went really quiet really quickly, didn't they? So that report simply wasn't accurate, it seems like. But it is what it is. The Rock is not done with wrestling per se. If he's able to have an interesting story and good payday, he will come back. We'll just see how it goes. Anand says, how much did AEW affect SmackDown ratings? Heard final ratings of SmackDown to be around 753. Those are not final ratings, Anand. And yes, Anand, at the end of this, we talked about all of this right at the beginning of the show for the first 20 minutes or so. Once we've wrapped up here, by all means, just knock back and start again to watch that point. Those are not the final ratings. Just to be entirely clear, those are not the final ratings. But I do believe AEW will have impacted SmackDown's final 30 minutes. Riffing says, which company do you think will sign Eric Rowan? Neither of them. He's been available for a very long time and nobody has signed him. JDE says, welcome, mate. I'm going to be a hated guy for this, but I'm just being honest. I think both shows have their issues. I like them both, but the notion that AEW can do no wrong is inaccurate. You are not going to be a hated guy for that, JDE. For anyone who's not particularly familiar with Tom Colohue shows, we are an analytical stream here. We are a intelligent stream. We are not a stream that favours one show or the other. We're a stream that jumps in and says, yeah, I think this because this. We're a stream that uses facts and figures while also respecting opinions of others. If anyone jumped down your throat right there, JDE, they'd be getting kicked out. That's how these streams work. So don't you worry. You're right. Both shows have issues, some big ones. In this stream, we've talked a lot about what I view as AEW's biggest problem, their retention rate. Jermaine says, I wonder how it went over if Sasha would use the Anaconda Vice or the GTS as a finisher on Becky this past Friday during the half-hour wrestling war while CM Punk was wrestling on the other channel. Would have been funny. Would have been very, very funny. But it would have probably convinced some people to think, oh yeah, I'm missing AEW. So they wouldn't have taken the risk. Rob says, I believe RK Bro has some more legs before we get to the point Riddle begins to climb towards more relevance on the card heading into post-WrestleMania. I think this tag team has got at least another 6 months before they eventually have their breakup and feud. Bailey says, television didn't put radio entirely out of business. The same will be for streaming. That's basically what I see as well, Bailey. Yeah, television will fade, but it will not die. There are still radio soaps, and radio, of course, got a resurgence with podcasts. Now, of course, we're seeing streaming, which is podcasting for TV. And here I am, sat on a stream with all of you. Sean says, how was Loki? Really fun. Really fun. There were some problems, though. There's no real spoiler here. But there's a point late on when one of the characters says to the other, it's going to be like that after all this time. And by all this time, they literally mean like a day that they've actually known each other. It's a ridiculous thing. There's a lot that I want to go into when it comes to Loki. But I'm a wrestling streamer. I don't feel this is the right vocation for it. At some point, I'm going to be jumping on streams that aren't just wrestling focused. But right now, I want to try and get to 1,000 subscribers. I want to try and get to 4,000 hours watch time. I'm not going to do that if I don't focus. But the day will come. Tommy says, it's tougher to get the ratings Raw used to get in the 90s. There's too much stuff now like YouTube, Twitch, etc. So much more stuff to watch. Very true. And of course, catch-up TV is a lot stronger now than it was in the 90s because there wasn't any. You'd have to tape it onto a VCR, which just doesn't sound like all that fun for a lot of people. So yeah, everything's different now. Everything's different. This is one of the reasons that WWE's YouTube is so successful. People watch it to catch up on what they've missed. Riffing says, should WWE break up the Usos after the Tribal Chief storyline? I mean, they have potential to become successful single stars just like the Hardy Boys. I don't believe for a second that they want to. In fact, they've both said in the past that they want to be a tag team forever. I don't necessarily think they both have the potential to become successful single stars. I think we saw with main event Uso, Jey Uso is a slightly better actor and a much more compelling wrestler than Jimmy Uso. That's how it is. I think Jey Uso could make it. Especially with all the additional problems that Jimmy has, I don't think Jimmy Uso could. Anand says, what's your take on Sonya Deville's return? With this authority figure with Shayna Baszler, do you think Charlotte will turn face soon when Shayna faces her for the SmackDown Women's Championship? I don't see Charlotte as a face per se, but I was seeing Baszler going more towards face, and now that's certainly out of the window. Sonya Deville is Sonya Deville, and it looks like she's going to be a heel mouthpiece for a heel potential champion. This is part of the Shayna Baszler push, which, if anyone hasn't already checked it out, if you're a regular here on this YouTube channel, or even if you haven't clicked subscribe so far, definitely do so, because I was able to report ahead of schedule and ahead of the WWE making it clear that Sonya Deville was going to be coming back to the ring, that Sonya Deville was going to be coming back to the ring this week, and that Shayna Baszler was about to start a pretty big push. If you want the wrestling news, this is a place to follow. But I liked it. I liked that Sonya Deville actually did wrestle even a little bit, so she is officially back as an active competitor. Shayna Baszler, however, this was in her favour. This was for her and continues her push. We now know what's going to be the case for Shayna Baszler going forwards after Crown Jewel, when I'm firmly of the opinion that she will be Queen of the Ring. Riff says, I think the WWE 13 was a good game. I played on Wii years ago, and I love that the game includes the Attitude Era roster. I still remember the old days playing WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy. I haven't played a lot of the recent WWE games. I think my last one was WWE 17, because there isn't much of a, there's not much for me. It's like when I play FIFA, I like the management side. I play Football Manager on Twitch. If anyone's interested in Football Manager on Twitch, that's coming back next month when they release Football Manager 22, by the way, on Tuesdays. But the WWE 17 didn't really hit the notes for me. I'll pick up another one in a couple of years and see how it goes. The user says, is John Cena's WWE career up, or can he have one more run? He can have as many more runs as he would like. He can come back as many times as he would like. However, I was able to report exclusively years ago on Sportskeeda that John Cena would never have future championship runs because he just doesn't want to. And since then, John Cena has never held a WWE Championship or Universal Championship. Riffing says, have you ever appeared on TV? Yes, I have. A few times, actually. I've appeared on TV a couple of times, usually in news shows. So at some point I'll find the picture for you guys because you may not believe this. But I got an honorary university degree when I was 12. There's a picture of me on my mother's mantelpiece in the cap and gown. So I'll take a picture of it and I'll show you guys at some point because I know you're not going to believe me. But I got an honorary university degree when I was 12. And I'll get the picture for you. It'll be me as a babby. And before the point where we went up and received the degrees, the diplomas as it were, I gathered everyone from my school together because it was a school thing, like it was a gifted and talented program thing. And there were 4 or 5 people from my school. And I gathered them all together just to see, like, is everyone nervous? Is everyone feeling okay? The cameras were there and the news were there, and they saw me essentially holding court a little bit and thought, all right, this kid's confident. Let's go and grab him. Let's talk to him. So they talked to me and I appeared on that. That was the first time I was on TV. Second time was a youth centre thing, was a youth work thing. Because I spent a little time as a volunteer youth worker, just essentially organising activities for young people. So I got a bit of TV time due to that as well. And I've also appeared on BT Sport, interviewing Triple H. Yep, appeared on BT Sport, interviewing Triple H. Dreams. Riff says, Cesaro should sign with AEW after his WWE contract expires. Maybe. I think he'd get lost in the shuffle a little bit at the minute, to be honest. Much like he is in WWE. Is Vince behaving in real life just like his character on television, an angry, grumpy old man? No, not at all. He's a very different person in real life. Riff, I disagree. I don't think Lesnar will win the Rumble, but I did have a video out today. For anyone who's not aware, I did release a video today about WWE and Brock Lesnar's future, what the plans are for the company. Flood, you alright, mate? Says, how do you think WWE will swap the women's titles to the correct brands? I think that Becky Lynch will win a crown jewel. I think on the SmackDown afterwards, they will have the moment where Becky Lynch is holding her championship, Charlotte is holding her championship, and then they go to swap. But I think Charlotte will then beat her up and take both belts and say, look, Becky, I've got 2 belts too. I'm 2 belts Flair. And then Survivor Series will come and, they'll just have a match and someone will win and they'll have their own championships. Anand says, your take on Bryan Danielson versus Suzuki. Had a lot of praise for that match. Also observed that Suzuki has lost these marquee matches recently. Will this affect his popularity? Not at all. Minoru Suzuki is not by nature a winner. That's not his role. He's there to put over younger talent. That's always been the case for Minoru. Well, it's not always. It's recently been the case for Minoru Suzuki for several years. The reason Suzuki is popular isn't because he's a winner. It's because he has matches that nobody else has in styles that nobody else does. Minoru Suzuki is a draw because of being Minoru Suzuki. I enjoyed the match. I enjoyed both men's styles in general. And from what I watched of it, I just really enjoyed it. Tommy says, even though I'm a WWE guy more, I love your unbiased opinion on both WWE and AEW. You tell it like it is of both companies and you don't act like WWE and AEW can do no wrong. Thank you, Tommy. I appreciate that. That's really nice to hear. Thank you. I try to be as unbiased as possible. That's sort of the selling point here. I'm trying to be unbiased because, yeah, WWE has some clear problems. AEW has some clear problems. And people are being really blinded to both sides. It's a problem. We don't have to be so tribal. We don't have to be so radical. We can look at something and say, I enjoy this, but this is a problem. I really enjoyed Loki, but it wasn't perfect. We can be analytical. The only problem is we can't be analytical on Twitter because then you're the devil and the dumpster fire falls on your head. Rob says, looking forward to that Loki stream. My daughter and I love the show. In the meantime, let's get that 1K thumbs up, everyone. Thank you, Robs. For anyone who hasn't yet, please do remember to click that like. That little thumbs up can make a big difference to my viewership. And if you are a new viewer here, either jump in and ask a question if you'd like, lurk if you'd prefer. We love a lurker here in this chat. And click subscribe if you haven't. It really does make a big difference to this show. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. That's necessary to monetize a YouTube. Also, if you're not aware, I also stream on Twitch, where we do live watch parties for both Raw and Smackdown. That is over at twitch.tv/Tom Colohue. So if you haven't there, you can always jump across and press follow there for even more Tom Colohue content. That's also where we do more news. You'll get news there that you get nowhere else. Sean says, I'd like to see John Cena win the Intercontinental title before his career is over. No reason why he shouldn't. I like that idea. Riff says, should Mohammed Hassan return to the wrestling business? If he would like to, yeah, I don't see any reason why not. Also said, should AEW sign David Benoit? If he would like to, yeah, I don't see any reason why not. David Benoit is not Chris Benoit, and he should not be hampered by that memory. He should still be able to wrestle because he's his own person and he was not connected to what happened. We should not hold him back because of what someone else did. Bailey says, Tom, do you have any other degrees? Yes, I did eventually get a degree of my own rather than just an honorary one. So I technically have multiple degrees, but it's an honorary degree, and it was because the university in question wasn't the greatest university, and I do feel they were kind of just trying to guarantee that people would go there. I'll get the picture for you guys at some point. It is a very cool moment. Riff says, is AEW pairing Leo Rush with Top Flight? Don't know, haven't seen enough of it to really know, but I'm a Leo Rush fan, so hopefully. Rob says, very cool, that Triple H interview must have been a mark-out moment for you on the inside. It absolutely was. As I left the arena, I called my sister and basically said, I've just interviewed Triple H. Literally my favourite wrestler growing up. Big deal. But you don't let it show because you're trying to be unbiased. No wrestling journalist is 100% unbiased. We do have our favourites, but we try to put that aside. That's the thing. Marsh Bags, welcome to the show. Says Naomi and the Bloodline, Shayna being wasted, do you think? No, Shayna's being pushed, and she's being pushed pretty hard. I don't see her being wasted here. She's in line for the Queen's Crown, and she's been winning matches pretty handily, which is a pretty big contrast to where she was even 2 months ago. So honestly, yeah, I think Shayna Baszler's doing pretty well at the minute. Naomi and the Bloodline, I'd like it. I would like it. But it doesn't seem likely at the moment because she seems to be one of very few female faces on SmackDown. Riff says, will you be shocked if Okada ever appears on AEW and challenges Kenny Omega? No, I think that's very much in the pipeline. Also Kota Ibushi, and of course, Jay White. Oh, Jay White. Jay White, for those who don't know, is my favourite wrestler in the world now. Riff says, Elias should have won the IC title in 2017 or 18. Elias has flattered to deceive, and WWE have essentially given up on him lately. They keep trying different things to get the guy over. They were trying a brand new experiment with Elias to get him over purely by association. They didn't focus in ring, and they were getting really, really good crowd responses. It worked. But nobody bought his t-shirts. Nobody bought his albums. Nobody went to his gigs. People were voting with their mouths, but they were not voting with their feet, so they kind of gave up. As Tommy B says, Twitter can be very toxic. It's crazy. Yeah, Twitter's a shithole. And Ann says, any update on Braun Strowman? Will he go to AEW or will he be a free agent for some more time? I do believe that Braun Strowman is going to Impact. I've been saying that for a couple of weeks now, maybe a couple of months. But he's been waiting for Bray Wyatt. So essentially wherever Bray goes, Braun goes. Riff says, I would love to see MJF's mother appear on TV and embarrass her son on live TV. Bit much, mate. Bit much. Sean says, Tom loves those lurkers. We do love a lurker, mate. We do love a lurker. The user says, if I was you, Tom, I would get WWE 2K22. A lot of hype for it, as 2K21 the fan favourite. You say there's a lot of hype for it. They've announced nothing so far. It's been constantly delayed. And yeah, 2K20, awful. I don't have faith. I just don't have faith. Everything Network, welcome to the show. Says, do you think WWE is purposely destroying Ziggler and Rude because of the comparisons to Triple H and HBK in the past? No, I think Ziggler and Rude are near the end of their careers and the WWE just has no interest in pushing them. I think they exist purely to put other people over. I think they have for a long time now. And I think by and large, they're fine with that. Riff says, why have the WWE never given the chance to Batista to have feuds with Rock, Lesnar or Hogan? Lack of interest from Batista? Basically. He only wanted to come back to feud with Triple H. After that, nothing really. Rob says, I can really appreciate the unbiased analytical standpoint. I think that's what struck me most when I first ran across you before Money in the Bank this year, as tribalism in general doesn't appeal to me. Well, I'm glad to find out when it was you joined us for the before Money in the Bank. That's great, Rob. You stuck around for quite a while then. And yeah, that's the hope. I want to present something that nobody else does. And I've realized in my years in wrestling journalism that I can present something that nobody else can. Unbiasedness. Because bias is strong in wrestling journalism. It's strong. Especially now that we've got WWE versus AEW. We need at least one person who can say, yeah, both shows fucked up this week. Now, I don't want to toot my horn too much. There's plenty of people who are unbiased. But there's not many of them streaming. Everything Network says Ziggler and Rude can definitely take over if time was put into them. Big fan of TNA Rude. Time will never be put into them again. I do agree. I think they're incredibly talented. Really talented. Ziggler versus AJ was a really fun feud for me. I've always been impressed by Ziggler's wrestling. Haven't seen enough of Rude in TNA. But I love the glorious theme. The guy was over on the back of that. But they will never get the time again. Riff says, should AEW bring Joey Mercury for just one night only for a segment with Punk, Selena and Gallows? Maybe, maybe not. I think they're happy where they are. I don't think they want to tread WWE history. Anan says, what happened with Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega's feud? Had only one match, I guess, and no title match. Could have been a huge draw if they could have continued with a championship match. Well, that may be coming. It's not gone. It's just briefly on pause. Briefly. Another little scoop. Scooping all over the place today. Sean says, I wish WWE and Punk would settle their issues. I understand that Punk got fired on his wedding day and the stuff with his infection, but Vince did apologise to him, and Punk had 7 years to get over it. Punk just has no interest in returning to the WWE, and here's the thing, it's not about getting over it at this point, he's just not interested. He's just not interested. And honestly, I'm on his side with this one. If he's not interested, he's not interested. I don't blame the guy for it. He wanted to come back to wrestling after that 7 years, so he went to AEW, just a different wrestling show. Credit to him. Riff says, Chad Gable's Shorty G gimmick reminded me of Jesse Slam's Master J's gimmick. I don't know who that is, Riff, so I'm just going to have to leave you with that one. Batman901, welcome to the show, says, why do you think WWE is more into Bianca than Rhea? Bianca Belaire's push was planned and came before Rhea Ripley's. Rhea Ripley was an emergency call-up. She was supposed to be spending a little time before becoming the champion. That didn't happen because of the unavailability of Charlotte Flair, the unavailability of Lacey Evans, and eventually the unavailability of Asuka as well. Rhea Ripley has been over-pushed by necessity, and that's why it hasn't quite gelled, whereas Bianca Belair has been slowly moved to the top and then has been knocked back down again in a way that will keep people behind her. Sean says, in my opinion, if Punk still holds that against WWE to this day, I believe he needs help. I won't go that far, Sean, personally. I'm certainly annoyed at a lot of my previous employers. I worked for a place for 10 years and then they fired me because, there's no work. You remember that. Riff says, do you think AEW will win the Ring of Honor World title? No, absolutely not. The user says, I remember the other month Elias was burning his guitar, maybe for a new gimmick, but have we seen him since then? We have not. The WWE plan a new gimmick, they're just not 100% sure what that new gimmick is, though they'll spend some time with Elias working out what it's going to be before then bringing him in. Gotcha, Riff. Still not sure, still going to leave that one. We've been streaming for an hour and a half. A huge thank you to everyone who's jumped in and said hi, everyone who's clicked like, everyone who's stayed here. The average watch time is actually incredible for this video. And I really am grateful for that. I'm going to start the wrap up. Marshbag says, I'm looking forward to the day when AEW talent leaves and turns upon WWE. Nothing better than that back in the day. MJF would be my choice. Agree. It would be a great name for it. I don't think it would be him first. I've mentioned Lance Archer before. I still believe that to be the case, but that will happen eventually. Everything Network says, should the FTW title have more importance because of the amount of stars in AEW? A lot of wrestlers not fighting for titles, and I feel that's how they got lost in the shuffle. There is such a thing as too many titles, though, so there is a balancing act to play. The FTW title for me is one too many. Alan says, any update on Samoa Joe? I don't believe he was cleared to wrestle when he last wrestled in NXT, and I believe essentially WWE have smacked NXT down a little bit. I don't know if we'll see Samoa Joe wrestle in WWE again. Riffing says, is WWE preparing Jeff Hardy to become a credible contender for Roman? Yes. We'll see if it pays off. Everything Network says, great podcast. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And Noob says, in my opinion, Bianca Belair is a better main event talent. We'll see as it goes. I still quite like Rhea Ripley. They're both good wrestlers. It's just a case of how they're presented. We are going to wrap up. I'm going to say a huge thank you to everyone. If you still have questions, we will be live tomorrow, 6 p.m. UK time. That is 1 p.m. Eastern time in the US. I don't want to completely bury my show tomorrow. So please, if you have more questions, keep hold of them and jump in tomorrow with them too. I have been Tom Colohue. I want to say a huge thank you to all of you. I've been Tom Colohue. You have been fantastic. And I will see you next time.